Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Monday, April 3rd, 2023 at 1 p.m. This is a regularly scheduled Fort Myers Beach Town Council meeting. All the council members are present. Attorney, town manager, town clerk are in attendance. Please rise for invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Accept our thanks for this day with all its blessings and opportunities. Thank you for every seat that has been filled here today, for each mind and heart that fills the presence of this room, as well as the lives of those we will encounter afterward. We meet today asking for guidance, wisdom, and support to engage in meaningful discussion for our leaders as they render service to our fellow citizens and community. Ready us to make every moment count. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we have the approval of a final agenda. Is there a motion to approve the final agenda? So moved. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have the public comment. Is there anyone in the public? Madam,
I have nobody signed up.
is there anyone in the public that has any interest in speaking? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for having us.
What's your
My
name,
name's
sir?
John McLean, Egret Street. I'd just like to thank you this morning for the public session that we had in meeting the candidates. There's a lot of talk on social media about people not being qualified enough, not being from the island, et cetera. I'd just like to say, in my opinion, we've got at least a couple of candidates here that are worthy of consideration. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else that chooses to speak? Hearing none, we'll close public comment. Local achievements and recognitions. Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Come back to me, Mr. Mayor.
I sure can. Councilor Veach?
Nothing for expediency.
I'm good, thank you.
Councilor King?
I'll just briefly say, had a nice evening at the Mound House with the Friends of the Mound House on Friday, and looking forward to the ribbon cutting ceremony tomorrow.
Vice Mayor Adderholt, you ready?
I'm going to go right after you.
Okay. I will mirror your comments, John. That was a great event. Unfortunately, I'll be in Tallahassee tomorrow, so I won't be there for the ribbon cutting, but I'll be there in spirit and hope it's a good event. Do you need me to take a little longer?
I'm sorry, I didn't have my phone out, and I typed this in on my phone. I just wanted to say briefly, and I know the mayor in particular and our two town managers can attest to a litany of people that have been extremely helpful to us and our staff from the state, feds, county, et cetera. But I wanted to mention a gentleman whose last day was last Friday, and I made a bunch of notes on my phone, and I'm challenged here to find them. This gentleman's nickname was Mo, and he was in charge of security at the front gate of our temporary town hall. He had a clean-shaven head and a demeanor that was encouraging to all. He served one tour of duty in the United States Marine Corps, and he's headed back to his home in Miami. He's with NFG Security. He will soon be, I'm sure everyone has met him. When you came into the town hall, right at the front gate there, he would greet you, direct you, and was extremely kind and encouraging to everybody who was really, quite honestly, going through a very tough time. And I was always uplifted by his demeanor. He's going to be running the security for a show that I'm sure all of my colleagues watch on a regular basis. It's called Love and Hip Hop Miami, and it plays on VH1. And it's Trick Daddy and Trina are the stars of the show, and you will see this gentleman on occasion providing security.
Jim, do you stay home to watch that?
I've not seen it yet, but it's on my list of things to do. But I got to tell you, Mo was such an encouragement to anybody who came in that gate. And I just, we often underestimate people like Donna, who's our receptionist for the town hall, who's such a blessing to so many people and sets the tone of service to people who come into our town hall. And I think those positions are often undervalued, particularly when they really do encourage and touch so many people. So thank you, Mo, for your service. I had sent a note to his boss for just thanking him as well for his service. But again, just wanted to mention that I'm sorry I wasn't prepared. I've been focused on other things this morning, but I wanted to make sure we mention that because I think he and his family are going to be watching. Thank you.
Well, I'll be looking forward to a counselor update on this show at the next meeting. Next, we have advisory committees, items, reports, and appointments. Any advisory committees here? Seeing none. Now we have approval for the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the management and planning session March 9th, town council joint session with the LPA March 9th, town council March 20th, and the town council joint session with the LPA from March 20th?
So moved.
Got a motion? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Go ahead. Got a motion and a second? Yes.
Well, I had a couple of, I noticed a few typos here and there. On page 3 of the March 9th, there was, they mentioned council member Bowen, and I think it should be LPA member B-O-A-N, not B-O-W-E-N.
Any other corrections? Is there, who got a motion and a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries unanimously. Next is a consent agenda. There are 3 items on there. Resolution 23-31 and 23-32, extension of the state of local emergency. Victor, do I have to read every single one of these resolutions through here? Okay. That's A. It's adoption of Resolution 23-31 and 23-32 entitled A Resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending and extending the proclamation that a state of local emergency exists because of the catastrophic impacts caused by Hurricane Ian, providing for conflicts, providing for Scrivener's errors, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. Item B is for the SRF Loan Agreement Amendment 4 DW 360801 payment suspension. That is to authorize the town manager to execute Amendment 4 to SRF Loan Agreement DW 360801 for the town of Fort Myers Beach, which will suspend semi-annual payment activities in the amount of $574,614 until April 15th, 2025, while the town focuses on hurricane restoration efforts. And agenda item C is SRF Loan Agreement Amendment 5, SW 360860, payment suspension. Authorize the town manager to execute Amendment 2 to SRF Loan Agreement SW 360860 for the town of Fort Myers Beach, which will suspend semi-annual payment activities in the amount of $413,222 until April 15th, 2025, while the town focuses on hurricane restoration efforts. Hearing that, is there a motion to approve consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next, we have the administrative agenda. For the first section is for 15-minute question and answer sessions with each of the town manager applicants. Who do we have going first?
Yeah, the only one this year.
Oh, yeah. Welcome,
Good
Mr.
afternoon.
Hyatt. Thank you for being here. We are going to start out with Vice Mayor Adderhall.
Good afternoon, Andrew. One of the most important traits I'm looking for in a town manager is servant leadership. That can be defined in many ways, but as it relates to public service, I would define it as an understanding and approach where it is established that the public servant works for the people, not the other way around. The authority and power entrusted to the public servant is temporary and on loan from the people. This should manifest itself in a spirit of humility and desire to put the needs of the citizenry first before one's ego or any personal agenda. Do you share that approach to governing and leadership? And if so, please provide some specific examples.
Yes, sir, I do. First of all, thank you for this opportunity. I've had a pleasure of getting to meet each one of you and some of the staff today, and I appreciate that opportunity. Public service. yeah, it's something you're called to, I believe. I learned at a young age that you need to do for others, and don't delight in the misery of others. And one thing that I've always tried to do everywhere I've gone is to try to uplift and improve the organization, the city, the town, the attitude, the culture of where I am. When we went to Surfside, when I went to Surfside, we had, we were in the middle of COVID. Everybody was behind cameras. Everybody was behind their computer screen. Everybody was trying to, get a lot of things accomplished without that personal interaction. We slowly got that personal interaction back up and got people, coming back to town hall. But we encouraged them to reach out to us in any way we could help them feel more comfortable, especially when we were going through COVID and we were doing the vaccines. We actually worked with the Department of Public Health of Miami-Dade County to come out to Surfside and actually go door to door to people who could not get out to do their or didn't feel comfortable, and it was mostly elderly citizens to get their vaccines. So we really worked closely with our citizens, and I've done that along the way. It's just something that I feel so strongly about, is to make sure that it's not a me first attitude, but a me last attitude, where I put the organization, I put the public above me, and to make sure that everything's done in accordance with them, as long as, public safety is job one. And that's one thing that I always strive to do, is make sure our public is safe.
Thank you. I assume you'd want us to do one at a time and then take turns?
We certainly could do it that way, sure.
Whatever you want.
No, that's
Because
fine.
I've got more, yeah.
No, I think that'll be fine. Councilor Beach?
All right, our town is going to go through a lot of changes. Tell me what steps you would take to help get public guidance and input into the future of Fort Myers Beach.
Well, one thing I've been thinking about today, especially as we interacted and talked and spoke a little bit, is working closely with these two gentlemen to my left, to your right, on where they have gotten the town to this point, understanding that history, understanding the path that they've set the town on. I want to make sure that each and every resident has a voice that I will hear, that the town will hear, that the staff will hear. You mentioned public service. You mentioned the face of the organization. The elected officials are very important. You're the face of the organization, making sure that you're aware of what's going on, making sure that we communicate with you, that staff communicates with you, that I communicate with you, our process and what we're doing out here. We want to make sure that everybody that has a need or a concern, a desire, is addressed in a timely manner. I think that's ultimate. The ultimate goal is to make sure that timeliness, that we do things right the first time, and that we also give them the right information to make it as expedient as possible. You hear things about how the processes are slow, or we can't get this, or we can't get that done. I get it. It happens, unfortunately, in government too often. But there's things we can do about that. And I think us need to do things about that to make sure that we expedite as much as possible, because you create tension when there's friction. And of course, nothing moves without friction most of the time. But I understand that we can take a negative move, turn it into a positive, and some of this time waiting and delays in processes should be shortened as much as we can control, and we can control quite a bit. Not having been here yet, not having been on the inside looking out, just the outside looking in, there seems to be some opportunity already being addressed, already being moved forward, and I think we can just continue to go in that direction.
Councilor Woodson?
You have a 5-member council here, and we're all pretty strong, determined, righteous people. How do you work with that? And say you have an instance where you know that there is a definite split in the council, and how do you move that agenda forward?
Well, a lot of the elected officials I've dealt with, feel the same way or in the same boat. And sometimes it's unanimous and they're going in the same direction. That makes life easy. Sometimes there's a little divide. Sometimes we see things a little differently. Obviously, and I'm gonna talk about two things, and that'll be highlighted as I go forward if I'm chosen. You'll hear a lot about relationships and about building a team consensus. Sometimes knows an answer. Unfortunately, we don't always get our way, including the manager, including the staff, including each one of you. I think, as long as we're providing the information to make educated, decisions based off of all the facts. I think we can all come to a happy medium to where, okay, it might not be the right thing now. I might not get what I support now, but we move forward based off the majority, and we try to understand as much as possible that everybody has an opinion, and they might not always mesh. That makes the job difficult sometimes for the one caught in the middle, but it's always an opportunity to continue to galvanize and strengthen the team, because there's got to be a direction given at some point. You can't take 5 directions, and sometimes it's even difficult to give one direction. But we try to take that, and we fill the direction, and we give feedback where feedback is necessary to make sure you are informed as possible to make those decisions that are going to be for the betterment and the good of the organization, the town.
Councilor King?
For you, why Fort Myers Beach?
I'm sorry?
For you, why Fort Myers Beach?
I happen to be one of those beach community kind of managers, small town beach community kind of managers. I've managed 2 beaches, and then a couple of the other cities I've managed were small. I like the challenge and the lifestyle of a beach community, and when I say that, it's the people that are here are usually here because they've chosen to be here. This is where they chose to move to live. I mean, if you're born here, I get that, but a lot of people choose to come to a community at times, and they can choose to go anywhere else, but when you choose to come to a beach community, you're looking at that as a little different chance to get involved more, and you see a lot. I typically have seen in my past that most beach communities have an active population, active citizenry. So I enjoy working with them. I enjoy Fort Myers Beach. Seems to be that one opportunity that's out there that is offers a little bit of a challenge. And when I say that, I'm not demeaning the challenge that's out there, but I think you don't know what the challenge is until you really get into it. But I see an opportunity here, which my strengths I feel like, and there's a weakness or two, and maybe be able to refine those. But my strengths lie in working with the beach communities and DEP and the groups that work with and around the Army Corps of Engineers. I've worked with them a lot, but just the environment that you're in a beach community, it's just a different vibe. And this is a little this is different from the 2 that I've worked in before. Obviously, Miami-Dade County, the northern part of Miami Beach, it's a little more. A lot more fast-paced, a lot more go, and this seems to be not nearly like that. Of course, I haven't felt the pulse of the community because I haven't spent a lot of time here yet, but I think there's a great opportunity to mesh with the community, and I think having a community like this, I mesh and blend a little more with my management style and the style of living that I prefer to do.
Well, Mr. Hyde, thank you for being here today. One of our biggest challenges going forward is obviously going to be financial over the next couple of years. Describing your experience in creating budgets and managing finances, as well as your financial management strategies for ensuring organization sustainability. Well, it all starts off with a good chief financial officer, I think, or a finance director, whatever the case may be. And I understand the gentleman that's been hired here has the qualities that it takes to be a good financial manager. I think it takes the village, because we all have to watch our budgets. We all have departments. The department heads all have to be mindful of spending, be mindful of expenditures. There are certain things that we want. Certain things we have to have, and so as we go through the budgeting process, we look at that. We actually, I actually participate in that. Okay, what can we live without? Kind of make that category. In a category, what do we have to live? And then there's some in the middle that sometimes we kind of, can move around, either add to the budget or it's a weight. So I think we look at that in a previous in Surfside, we were putting anywhere. The 3 budgets I did, we were anywhere from $3 to $7 million we were putting in our fund balance reserve, so that to help with rainy days. And then we also, what we did over there, we created some funds, some individual. We passed an ordinance that, a resolution that dedicated funds for certain categories, whether it be water and sewer, stormwater,
streets, that type of thing. So they are separate from everything and they can't be touched. So we memorialize those to be able to keep those safe in case we ever need it. So we never really just absolutely ran out of cash. That's important. Cash on hand is very important as we move into each budget year. I'm very conservative with budgeting. I think it's important to be conservative. I hear a lot of people talk about, watch that money and, spend that money like it's yours. No, it's somebody else's money. It's not my money. So I watch it like who it belongs to. Good steward of the public's trust, public funding. And so we try to make sure we spend it on the things. And again, I'll put public safety at the top of the list every time. Whatever we can do for public safety to improve life, quality of life, and protect the public is going to be something we focus on.
Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Andy, communication and relationship building skills are a couple of traits that are critical to the success of a town manager. Obviously, with our own residents and constituency groups here locally, but also right now we're critical our relationship with the county, state, and federal government. Please comment on how you have prioritized these skills of communication and relationship building, and give some specific examples of where you've utilized them to advance the interest of the communities you have served.
Nothing is more important than those relationships, and I'm not just talking about with other other governmental entities. Talking about with each other, with the residents. Everything starts with the residents. It's so important, incumbent upon us, upon me, to make sure that they're involved in the process, whether it be voting, whether it be on my part on listening to what they have to say. One thing that I feel is very important is to always work with the local governments, which would be here or any other local government from our north, south, and east area that we have with local municipalities, but also with the county. That's such a strategic partnership, especially since the pier and 2 parks are here and some of the roads and some belong there. When I was, and of course, obviously the state and federal government. Obviously, when I was in Surfside, and I'm sure we've all talked about it today, but some people might not realize that I was the manager when the building collapsed in Surfside in June of 2021. One thing, I was new to the game there, but one thing I learned was all of a sudden we were all thrust into one event, one pot, the local governments, ours, and then the other municipalities that were surrounding me in Miami-Dade County. The county, big county of Miami-Dade, working with the county mayor's office and her staff. That was and very strategic to getting a lot of things accomplished. Working with the fire department, police department. We contracted with the fire department of Miami-Dade County, but we had our own police department, but we also worked with Miami-Dade Police Department. They were doing the death investigation. To go a step further, worked very close with the governor's office. Something that I did not think when I went there I'd be, engaging the governor himself on the streets of Surfside in front of a collapsed building on A1A at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But we had a conversation there, and we talked about the need to have that relationship and the need to continue to do that. And I continue to believe that I've got relationships there with the state, with Kevin at the emergency management, and even we even went further and we interacted and we engaged with international governments during that event, because it was such an international event with the Prime Minister's offices of Israel. And just working with the governments of Mexico in a different way. So things that you don't normally think you would do, and I didn't ever think I would do that. Those were things that now, somewhere up here in that little compartment, I have something to fall back on how to do government relations, international government relations, intergovernment relations, and other government relations, as it were, to improve our standing, to get funding. I know you guys are going up tomorrow to Tallahassee. You got to do that. I mean, you got to go where they are. I've been to Washington, D.C. when I was at another small town to make sure that our voice was heard there. Sometimes you got to put legs and steps with what you actually want to get accomplished and get in front of people. But it's about those relationships and continue to build those and expand on those and strengthen those. Thank you.
We're just going to finish out this. Councilor Veach.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I think I'm good, thanks.
Councilor Woodson.
So is there, You've had a number of interviews. It's been a wild morning. Is there anything that you feel that you have not been able to express about your experience or that you would like us to know?
I think, thank you. I think the one thing, you know, I've read a few of the comments. I mean, sometimes you just need to take a pulse of the community and see. So before I came, I read a few of the comments. It was talking about the experience and the hurricane experience. I would dare say, and I think I mentioned to a couple of you, there's not many managers that you can plop down in this position right now today that have had the experience of a total recovery of a pretty devastated city. That's a small number, and they're hard to find. But I have had those I've had experiences similar. Obviously, that collapse was something that we had no forewarning. You know, it's not like you had a hurricane warning or a building collapse warning 10 days ahead. You know, it's a one morning go, and you got to react. You got to respond. You have to have your emergency management hat on now. You can't go sit back and say, okay, well, after it's over, we'll go fix it. I think, you know, the hurricanes that I've been through with Wilma and with Irma and with Matthew, and even though the recovery wasn't to the level of where we are now, there was still recovery, still working with FEMA. It's still the same type of process, maybe not as in depth, but it's still the same process of working with those organizations that are required in the state of Florida.
Councilor King?
Councilor Woodson covered mine, so I'm good.
All right, I'll give you one more, and then we'll let you be anywhere. We may have more questions down the road, but
Okay.
you know, we've covered communication. Obviously, you covered some of the finance part of it. One of the other important things, at least for me, is how you interact with your staff. How would you elevate your staff's strengths, weaknesses, and opportunity for improvement, and how do you implement changes when needed?
The last position I had, the first thing I did was I sat down with Human Resources, and I sat down with each staff member, director, department head, and then we went further. But this was one of the first things I did, and we went over their job description. And we asked those questions. I asked those questions, you know, do you really do this? I mean, what else do you do? And it was surprising to see that there were some things that were not being done, or that were being done that weren't on the job description. So it's like, you're not really getting credit for it. You know, one thing I'm a huge proponent of promoting within. When I was in Surfside, I promoted 3 people to directors' positions. I encourage, I empower. I think it's good for them to stand here at some point, because you never know when that diamond in the rough steps to the forefront, and your job could be made easier if something were to happen to the next city manager, heaven forbid. It could be a number of things. Your replacement could be sitting right out there, but you didn't know it. So I like to empower them to do and think and have some voice. Leadership, to me, leadership used to be, I'm the leader and rah, rah, look at me. But now it's a little more from behind. I've gotten a little older, and it's like, you know, let's put the spotlight on others who deserve it. The blame should always come through here, but the spotlight should go through there, because they are actually the ones who do most of the work. Subject matter expert in a lot of these areas. And so just give them the credit where the credit's due. And I really believe at all levels of the staff to be able to try to have interaction with them. I've been in places where we've developed a 180, a 6-month review process, where at each step of the way, the new employee meets with the supervisor. 30 days later, they meet with the manager. 30 days later, the director. 30 days later, with the higher and higher. That way, everybody gets to, you know, it's a fine meshing, and it's a fine understanding of everybody's response and just who you are. It takes off the aura. Oh, that's the manager. I'm a little nervous about being. No, I'm just a guy. I'm just like what you see now. This is it. There's no airs. I'm a public servant. I'm the one. I'll be happy to sit in the back during meetings. You know, that's just the way I operate. But I want my staff to know that they are appreciated, and none of this is done without them. By the way, I mean, I don't know. With all due respect to these fine gentlemen, you got to have the staff. The person at the front, when you walk in the front of town hall, they got to be there answering the bell. So I think that's in the phone. Somebody's got to answer those phones. So I like staff development. I think it's very important.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hyatt.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Who's up next? Seth Lawless, okay. No, I think if we keep it that same, it'll potentially go faster or slower. Yeah, exactly right.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you? You want to identify yourself so everybody at home knows who you are?
My name is Seth Lawless from Monticello.
Well, thank you for being here, Seth. Vice Mayor Erholt?
Seth, one of the most important traits I'm looking for in a town manager is servant leadership. That can be defined in many ways, but as it relates to public service, I would define it as an understanding and approach where it is established that the public servant works for the people and not the other way around. The authority and power entrusted to a public servant is temporary and on loan from the people. This should manifest itself in a spirit of humility and a desire to put the needs of the citizenry first before one's ego or any personal agenda. Do you share that approach to governing and leadership? And if so, please provide some specific examples.
Well, I certainly share that sentiment. I think you're there to better the community. The whole council manager form of government is to take the politics out of local government. Going back to Stanton, Virginia, in the first place it was incorporated, and to put a professional manager to run the day-to-day business. And so I've got no agenda. I never will develop an agenda. I may have opinions and ideas which I will share with you. I will have recommendations. But I'm here to carry out the will of the majority of the council. And just like I assume you're here to carry out the will of the citizens.
Thank you.
Councilor Veach?
Our island has gone through incredible turmoil, and as we rebuild, what steps will you take to ensure that the public has input into the future direction of this town?
I think you just don't shut anything off. Every avenue should be open and remain open, and whether that's here at the dais at a council meeting or in a private email, one-on-one conversation in the office or out in the field. You always need to be hearing from the community and what's on their minds. Take that information and decide what you're going to do with it. Whether you need to move forward or just tell them honestly, I don't think I can accommodate your request. I'm sorry, but I'll look into it and I'll get back to you, and you better get back to them, even if the answer is no. So closing those loops of communication and making sure you follow through is very important.
Thank you.
Councilor Woodson?
So we are a five-person council with a lot of different personalities, strengths, push, some
Excuse me,
pull.
it's pretty warm in here. I'm sorry.
So I'm just wondering, how do you work with that five-person council? How do you, if you know there's some dissension and a tie, and it's a very important decision, how do you work with the council behind the scenes to get to where we need to be?
Well, I am a believer in one-on-one communication, but as you know, I can't tell you what another council member said about a particular issue or what they may do at the council meeting. So you got to tread very lightly there to make sure you're operating in the sunshine. But I think it's important to start building towards a consensus one way or the other and have some options and alternatives for the council. That's part of the manager's job, is to have recommendations, and council may have recommendations that are completely different on their own, but I think the manager should have some solid recommendations on most issues on how to move forward on those issues.
Councilor King?
For you, why Fort Myers Beach?
Well, you have a lovely community here, a lovely location. You're very blessed with the sun and sand and water. So it's an ideal location to be long term and short term, but I felt like the job at hand right now is something that I could do. It's something I've done before. We were in Islamorada during Irma. I've been through storm cleanups, and so I have confidence that I can do it. You need a good team. You need to be communicating constantly, making sure everybody has the latest information. But you've got a great area and a job that I think I'm a fit for. So that's why Fort Myers Beach.
Seth, describe your experience in creating budgets and managing finances, as well as your financial management strategies for ensuring organization sustainability.
Well, usually when you go into the budget, you've got a number. You know what you have to work with on the revenue side, or pretty close. So that makes it a exercise in establishing priorities. And of course, you got to take care of your life safety issues and your health issues and your absolute necessities. And then after that, if you're fortunate, you can graduate into some more of the wants, the street paving, the parks, the development of amenities and other programs. So you take care of your basic priorities first in the budget. You make sure it's a responsible budget and that you can't go in and boost rates and fees enormously in any one year. I believe in graduating those types of increases, especially if you have long-term capital needs you're looking out for. You try to identify outside sources of revenue, either grants or appropriations, and you put together a long-term plan.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Seth, communication and relationship building skills are a couple of traits that are critical to the success of a town manager. Certainly that goes without saying. Our residents is priority number one. But as we go through these difficult times, the county, the state, and the federal government are really critical to the future of our to our success in the future. Please comment on how you have prioritized these skills, and give examples of where you have utilized them to advance the interests of communities that you've served in the past.
Well, you've got to take advantage of your opportunities, and sometimes you even have to create those opportunities. So starting at the federal level, those folks don't wander through town very often, maybe occasionally, especially after a disaster. But in order to get on their radar and get the area, you have to go to them sometimes. You have to be in touch with them and not let them forget about you. And if that means taking trips to Tallahassee or Washington, D.C. on occasion, primarily elected officials, but with staff in support, those are things you have to do. Same at the state legislative level, the state regulatory level, and you get down to the county level, and it's a little different. You see those people on a daily or weekly basis. But you have to bring the issues forward, let them know what your concerns are, make your case, have your elected officials make the case. I think that's always very important, that the manager is there to do what the council wants them to do and to lead where appropriate. But the chief elected official, in my opinion, in dealing with outside government agencies, that's where the chief elected official plays a very large role. In dealing with the federal government, dealing with the state government, the chief elected official represents the town in many cases. And so I'd see it as a partnership between the elected official and the staff getting on the same page and having a plan on how you're going to approach those and what you're going to ask for. And certainly before each session, it's my practice, or been in the habit of, bringing forward lists, asking for ideas in advance of the legislative session. What's on our plate? What are our needs? Let's get our list together. Let's get a vote of the council so we can say that this has been endorsed by a majority of the council, and take that to them with a resolution.
Thank you.
Councilor Veach?
Nothing. I'll enjoy the questions from the other councilors.
Councilor Woodson?
So you've been through a whirlwind of interviews this morning. Is there anything that we have not discussed today regarding your knowledge or your fit for this position that you'd like to bring forward?
No, I thought I'd maybe hit some highlights very quickly of other places I've been, because I think it shows a record of accomplishment. And, as I go through this list, there's a lot of construction projects on there. And sure, you have to deal with personnel issues and policy issues and issues of the day, citizen complaints. But when I look back on the communities I've served, I think about the library we built in Franklinton, North Carolina, the rec center we built in Beach Mountain, the 80-acre park, destination park with the YMCA that we built in Nightdale. Those are the type of accomplishments that I put on my resume, and I think back with some pride on that I was a member of the teams that developed those, and they're kind of my career highlights. That's what I had the most fun in working on, and when I go back through those locations, that's where I go. That's what I look at. I roll through the park and I go check on the library and the rec center and stuff like that. So.
Counselor King?
My follow-ups have been addressed, so I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Seth, how do you elevate your staff's strengths, weaknesses, and opportunity for improvement, and how do you implement changes when needed?
This is going to sound kind of corny. Winston Churchill said, "What gets written down gets done." And so I'm a believer in performance evaluations. Let me back up a little bit, and I'm a believer in strategic planning, and that filters down to values, and goals, and objectives, and eventually to individual performance measures that the manager allocates to the staff in order to accomplish those goals and objectives and those visions and that mission. And so it's an inverse triangle almost. It start with those broad strategic goals, and they end up being specific tasks that people have to actually do and accomplish by a date certain, and those need to be written down and monitored and talked about of why they're not being met, or good job, you accomplish that, let's decide what's next.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lawless. We may call you back up if we have some more questions, but we'll move on to who's next? Jeff Schubert? Jeff Schubert is next. It is hot in here. Oh, warm. Can you? Yeah. I want someone to pass out up at the... It does. You guys warm out there? You're looking awful content up there. I see a couple shiny foreheads like mine. Well, I wasn't directing it at you, Mr. Safford, but since you jumped in. Yeah, that's true. That's very much true. Moving further south. Welcome, Mr. Schubridge.
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, of the council.
Vice Mayor Underholt.
Afternoon. One of the most important traits I'm looking for in a town manager is servant leadership. That can be defined in many ways, but as it relates to public service, I would define it as an understanding and approach where it is established that the public servant works for the people and not the other way around. The authority and power entrusted to a public servant is temporarily on loan from the people. This should manifest itself in a spirit of humility and a desire to put the needs of the citizenry first before one's ego or any personal agenda. Do you share that approach to governing and leadership? And if so, please provide some specific examples.
Absolutely. I think that working in public service is a service calling. It's in the name. When we're helping people, if you're here for your own ego, then you're in the wrong job, because that's going to come back at you. It just is. As far as public service, you need to do what's right by the community. One of the watchwords or watch phrases that I use, I can work with any council or any person, any committee who has the best interests of the community at heart. And that is just an embodiment of that, of exactly that philosophy. We work for the community. That's not to say we work for an individual community member, but we have to work for the community as a whole. But all of the community members need to feel heard.
Councilor Veach?
Our town has gone through incredible turmoil. What concrete steps would you take to ensure engagement and with the community into the future of Fort Myers Beach?
Well, first and foremost, again, community involvement is essential. And I've seen in the reports in the news that this event, as tragic as it is and as bad as awful and horrific as things have been, when I came through and saw that firsthand, it really is just something that just hits you. But one of the things that you need to be open and available to the community. And one of the things that I've done in a previous city is I've offered either breakfast, lunch, whatever works, lunch with the administrator or whatever. You find a local venue or several local venues. You rotate. You don't want to pick one as they become available. And if someone has a question, someone has input, somebody wants input, they can just sit down and talk. You actively encourage committee involvement. I keep an open door policy in any community that I've been at. The schedule may not allow for immediate access at any time, but you absolutely have got to be available to the constituency because they're all of our bosses. We have to have a unified vision, and the only way to do that is to be available and to listen.
Councilor Woodson?
So we're a 5-member council with a lot of different agendas and attitudes and priorities. And sometimes we're split. How do you go about addressing or hurting us or getting us to resolution?
Ma'am, we are all individuals. And as I said before, anyone that has the best interests of the community at heart, I or any manager should be able to work with. As far as the herding, to use your phrase, it is inherent in the job of a town manager to provide guidance. It is not to direct. I provide the information. You are 5 council members and you have 5 personalities. It would be unheard of to think that every vote is going to be unanimous. We are going to have things that we may disagree with amongst each other on the proper course of action. But that being said, professionals can work together with respect, and we can stay the course for the betterment of the town. I would not expect to try to herd the commission or sway the commission, only to inform.
Councilor King?
For you, why Fort Myers Beach?
The short, simple answer, it's two-pronged. One, my current location was supposed to be ground zero. This is what I expected to wake up to on October 1st. The town of Fort Myers Beach needs someone to step in and help. Second, I grew up here. I have roots in the area. I grew up in Cape Coral. This is coming home for me. That's something that I shared with several of the council members. 2 weeks ago, my fiance and I came and drove the town. You can't get any kind of an impression of what happened here without seeing it firsthand. I had to pull my car over at Estero Boulevard to give her a hug because she was breaking down looking at the devastation. I think I'm the person that can step in and help us organize the rebuilding, to maintain that small town atmosphere that I remember and still maintain that tourist economy that Fort Myers Beach has enjoyed. It's two diametrically opposed venues that a lot of people may see, but Fort Myers Beach has done very well in the past. And when I was in high school coming over that bridge, looking at the island, something I'll never forget. It breaks my heart to come over that bridge today, knowing what has happened. But I also have hope that moving forward, we can bring back the character of our town.
You know, many of the challenges we have, one of the most important is going to be finances over the next 2 years. Describe your experience in creating budgets and managing finances, as well as your financial management strategies for ensuring organization sustainability.
Along that line, sir, in a previous position as a town manager, I took the town budget from losing a $2 million annual budget that was losing $500,000 a year. In the course of 18 months, through financing, budgeting, proper budgeting, within 2.5 years we were cash neutral, maintained the second lowest tax rate in the county. We're rebuilding reserves. It goes to looking at wants, needs, might-haves, and looking at the realities of what expenses are there. In my current town, a similar circumstance. They've not been cash flow negative, but they've been spending off budget. Transparency in budgeting is essential. Input from all stakeholders, department heads, is essential. The final call belongs to the council, but it is my job, along with the finance director, to provide an outline of that budget. As we move forward, the key parts to that, and I believe it was you that I shared with earlier, my budgeting philosophy involves the department heads, and what I ask from them is 3 different budgets. The first budget is this: what is your dream? If we had no monetary worries, what do you want? The second budget is, what do you think is realistic? And the third budget that I ask for is, what do you, in the event of the apocalypse and we have no money, what do you absolutely need to survive? I then sit down with the department heads and we negotiate, and we find a happy medium. We then proceed to the town council and allow the town council, through workshops, to influence where they feel the importance. The budget is the priority mechanism of the town. Our priorities need to be reflected as such. So my budgeting philosophy is, we assemble what we recommend operationally. The council will provide us with long-term projects for the capital, which would be the first step, and then it is staff's job to make sure that that stays balanced.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Earl?
Communication and relationship building skills are a couple of traits that are critical to the success of a town manager. Obviously, this is critical for our residents, but more importantly right now, given Ian, with the county and the state and the federal partners, those relationships are very, very important. Can you give some examples of your work in the past where that relationship building and communication skills have been utilized to advance the interest of the communities you've served?
As a member, when I was in Madison Lake, Minnesota, one of the key items that I took on is I was a board member for the Minnesota Association of Small Communities, or Small Cities. With that, we worked directly with the governor and the legislature. I was able, through that connection and through those relationships with the city of Madison Lake, the state was coming through to rebuild part of our state highway that went through the middle of our town. With those relationships, I was able to get concessions from the Department of Transportation to pay for about 60% of the undergrounding costs of utilities, as well as about 40% of undergrounding of electrical utilities, and about 40% of renovation costs for sewer and water and stormwater infrastructure along that corridor.
Thank you.
Counselor Veach,
I passed twice. I have to pass the third time, too.
Counselor Woodson,
So you've been through a whirlwind of interviews this morning. Is there anything that you feel that you would like to explain more about or that we haven't touched on that in your background that would be critical to our position?
Just that, and this came up in one interview, and one thing that it was brought up by interim city manager, that my background is varied. I've been in 2 cities as city manager. I've been an elected official. I think that gives me a unique perspective on the position because I've seen it from both sides. Additionally, I've been a private sector manager and entrepreneur. I've been a teacher. Those things, the skill sets that I've built through those positions has provided me with an ability to engage productively and effectively with people from all walks of life. It's really important. We have a very small town. We're devastated. It's important that everyone here, all of the people, understand that we're a team, we're in it as one, and it's a common goal. It's no one person or 2 people or 3 people dictating the goal. And I think that background has provided me with the ability to speak competently with a wide variety of people to encompass the majority of our residents.
Counselor King.
My follow-ups have been addressed. Thank you.
All right, Jeff, how do you elevate your staff's strengths, weaknesses, and opportunity for improvement, and how do you implement changes when needed?
Honest communication to begin with. You have to set expectations. If someone is not meeting those expectations, then you have to communicate them. You can't set someone loose and say, make everything happen, and not tell them what it is you expect to happen. But at the same time, periodic updates, when you're talking with staff and you're working with staff, you have to be able to be honest with them, and you have to have those relationships with your key staff members and all staff members, that they understand that if something is falling short, if you need to take corrective action, then it's not a personal attack. Because as soon as someone feels personally attacked, your morale is going to go down. On the other hand, if you address the behaviors, correct the behaviors, then you can then instill in your staff that you are there to support them, and that mistakes, we're all human. Mistakes will be made. As far as change management, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But if it's broken, look at how to fix it. Don't make change just for the sake of change. You have to have a process in place. You have to have a backup plan. So if you're going to make a change, it needs to be done appropriately so that you can have a smooth transition. I will use an example from my current position. Our building department was not operating at what would be called peak efficiency. Our permit times were excessive for minor permits. Myself and our building commissioner attempted to coach our in-house building official, and it became necessary to make a change. I spoke with the building official, and he told me what was going to happen before I could tell him. We're still friends. If you have the respect of your staff, then the difficult decisions, while still difficult, aren't animate. There's no animus involved.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shumich. Who's next? Mr. Wilkins, I think, is next.
Thank you.
Thank you. I thought I said thank you, but. Brian Key, stopper ganger. afternoon, Mr. Wilkins.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Erholt?
Good afternoon. One of the most important traits I'm looking for in a town manager is servant leadership. That can be defined in many ways, but as it relates to public service, I would define it as a understanding and approach where it is established that the public servant works for the people and not the other way around. The authority and power entrusted to a public servant is temporary and on loan from the people. This should manifest itself in a spirit of humility and a desire to put the needs of the citizenry first before one's ego or any personal agenda. Do you share this approach to governing and leadership? And if so, please provide some specific examples.
Absolutely. No, I definitely agree. I mean, that's why we're here. We're here to serve the citizens, here to, as my position, here to serve you too. You'll see through my career, I've been in serving public sector for 27 years. First with Kendall County, Illinois. It was the fastest growing county in the nation, about 40 miles southwest of Chicago. One of the servant projects there was our Kendall Area Transit Project. I've described that to some of you there. But that, again, was a project that we didn't have public transportation. And the board came to me and said, we need it. Other counties have it around us. Very detailed process, comprehensive planning process, pulling together those that serve the seniors, those that serve youth, those that serve the disabled, as well as the general public. We wanted a system that served everyone. So I bring that one up as an example that was comprehensive of serving multiple sectors of the public. We also worked with our economic development and our chambers, just how could this work in our business sector too? So that, just an example of a planning process of getting that feedback, developing a program, and making it a reality. I described this to you before. We had 12 cities in our county. What was successful is all 12 cities contributed to the project, and that we used that as local match then to leverage state grants and federal grants to make a successful transportation project.
Thank you.
Councilor Veach?
Our town has been through a lot of turmoil lately. What concrete steps would you take to ensure public engagement into the vision of the future of Fort Myers Beach?
Yeah. Again, it goes back to that comprehensive planning. You hope that the public, I mean, we have some here, some that were here this morning, so appreciate seeing them. But incorporating them into the public input process early on, whether that's electronic, charrettes, or all combination of. But synthesizing that input to where it's useful for you and for the public too. Taking something that's anecdotal and trying to create something that's usable information. But mainly it's through again charrettes and public process surveys and such. I know you have a lot of processes here. What are you already have the challenges of redevelopment, but how are you going to get that input for Times Square area? How are you going to get the input for other parts of southern part of the island too? But yeah, you work it in through surveys, through public meetings.
Thank you.
Councilor Woodson?
So we're a 5-member council with all different agendas, backgrounds, opinions, very strong opinions. We may or may not be in agreement. A lot of times we're not. How do you negotiate that? How do you help us through that process to get us on the same page?
I'll give an example. When I went to Buchanan, Michigan, I described this to you, that they had 6 city managers in 2 years. Just one side of the town would say day, the other side would say night. But first and foremost, with council members, describe this to you, what is that that you want to impact? We're getting your feedback, your input. But I understand and cognizant that you have an election too. You want to be able to participate and say, hey, we did this, and you were part of it too. So I want to be able to not only know what buttons and what impact and change that you want to affect, but then make sure that you're part of it and you feel part of it and you've been successful. So a lot of that is a lot of communication up front. I've described to you earlier about how I approach my first 6 months. So I'm not necessarily sure I need to go through that again, but I think that's also active listening. In a lot of meetings, sometimes council members will times talk past each other. So I like to be able to listen, actively listen, and see where I hear the common ground, and sometimes I might step in and explain this is what I'm hearing, and at least to express what I hear as the common ground and try to facilitate that discussion.
Councilor King?
For you, why Fort Myers Beach?
You know, you have a community here, really a community of choice. You all chose to come here. Just about everyone who's come here has come here by choice. And you have not only to be part of the community and develop the community, but also as a destination. So you have a great asset here, but you've just been knocked down. And for me, it's that challenge. I've been part of other communities where we've had challenges. I think when you look at my skill set and strategic planning and capital planning, financial planning, intergovernmental relations, team building and HR experience, I feel like all those assets pulled together, that they match up very well with the challenges that you have. So really, it's looking at the challenges. I look forward to when you start to develop again. It's you're going to create something special.
Jeff, financial stability is going to be one of our toughest challenges over the next couple of years. Describe your experience in creating budgets and managing finances, as well as your financial management strategies for ensuring organization sustainability.
Well, really, every position I've had has been knee-deep in budget, so it's pretty much A to Z. So whether it's setting the parameters of setting up just the department budgets, but those department budgets should be linked to projects and goals that are prioritized. So first and foremost, you're looking at your forecast, and you're setting some parameters for your department heads to follow, and so you can set up at least a good operational budget. Obviously, with the capital needs that you have, you got to fit those in with the priorities too. But I've had a lot of experience with governmental loans that the city or the town may need, bond finance. As far as capital planning, you've seen where I've planned courthouse expansions, jail expansions, and put the financial plans together for those, issued the bonds for those, refinanced the bonds for those. So, been very very detailed oriented in those projects. So. Really, I always want to, if we can, you want to pay as you go as much as possible, but there's going to be projects, 20, 30-year lifespans that you may need to finance, and we'd obviously try to take advantage as much of the programs that are available now to the island.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Earl.
Yeah, you've touched on the communication piece. I want to ask you about relationship building skills, particularly as we've just gone through, Ian, the importance of our county and state and federal partners. Can you give some specific examples of how you've utilized your relationship building skills in the past to advance the interest of your community?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we usually, every year we'd have a public policy agenda, legislative agenda that we would work with our state caucus as well as our federal. A couple of examples at Kindle, there was an outer belt that we worked toward. It was called the Prairie Parkway. So worked toward planning dollars for that, and we received those planning dollars through IDOT. Other projects. We were a county that didn't have an interstate through us, so everything was on the county highways. So we had a lot of planning processes with the 12 cities and the townships that were in our county to plan the county highway system to take that off, to reduce congestion. So with that, once I actually spearheaded a group that we had a transportation sales tax referendum that did pass, and that helped us leverage IDOT monies. And we would work with the district of IDOT as well as our caucus of what our capital priorities were, and got the funding, matching funding for it.
Thank you.
Councilor Veach.
Once again, I'll pass.
Councilor Woodson.
So you've been on the whirlwind interview schedule this morning. Is there anything that you would like to emphasize, or maybe that we haven't touched on in your background, that you think would be important for us to know?
Yeah. I believe we're very comprehensive with each, and I think we covered most everything in each of the interviews. I think what you'll see from a public standpoint as well as a staff standpoint, I'm very approachable. I lead by example. I'll give them good direction and build the teams. They may not always like the decision that I make, but they'll know that it's been weighed, for pluses and minuses. A lot of times those decisions, will be incremental. They may, trying not to hinder us from future decisions that we may need to take. So I'm not sure if I touched on that this morning as much. Mm-hmm.
Councilor King?
My follow-ups have been addressed. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Wilkins, the, no good organization is run without a team. How do you elevate your staff's strengths, weaknesses, and opportunity for improvement? And how do you implement changes when needed?
Well, with the staff I described before, I've already said about we, and the council's part of the we too. But when I build teams around projects or around goals, I want to make sure it's, most of the time you have to have cross-functional teams. It might involve the attorneys too, and engineering and consultants as well as staff. Like to see younger staff that are less experienced be part of a team so they can grow. I've described before that they need to know what their roles are in that project. That's the worst thing for staff not to know what their role is, and that's where the miscommunication happens and friction happens. So when at the end, they've been engaged, they feel like they've grown, they've built their expertise. I'm always looking for ways as far as training for them to grow. But I've said this too, a lot of times when you're hiring staff, you got to also show them the pathway. What was their career pathway with your organization? So that keeps them retained, and I think that goes a long way to keeping staff.
All right, Mr. Wilkins, thank you.
Great, thank you.
We'll take it from here.
All right.
At this time, we moved the second public comment portion of this up to this area to see if there was any public comment after having the 8 o'clock session with the potential candidates, and then meeting with us, and then hearing this. If anyone would like to come up and speak, have any input? Any public comment? Hearing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back. That brings us to our next agenda item, selection of the town manager. I guess before we get started, I want to go around the room, or go around the dais here and just ask a basic, simple question to each of the council members, if they feel that they are comfortable with the candidates that we have in ranking them today and making a selection and moving forward with a top candidate today. Vice Mayor Adderholt?
I have found one candidate that I think would be an excellent town manager.
Councilor Veach?
I'm okay to go ahead.
Councilor Woodson?
I truly am not comfortable. I thought I had someone after the first round of interviews, and now I'm wavering on that. I'm not seeing the kind of background that I like, that I would like to see in this candidate. I feel there's got to be stronger candidates out there. So I'm not totally convinced, and I'm not comfortable.
Councilor King?
I'm probably 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, to use a donut example. But I don't know. It's a tough decision. It's probably the toughest decision we're going to make. I guess I'm with Karen. I'm not sure I'm totally comfortable yet to move forward.
Well, thank you for that. So I guess it leaves it up to me. I felt I had very good interviews one-on-one with each of the candidates. A couple I was not comfortable with, a couple I was. I tried to be objective and open-minded based on what you read. I'm a firm believer that until you actually get to sit across the table and talk to someone, you don't really get a feeling for what they stand for, how they'll fit in the community or potentially fit in the community. But I feel comfortable moving forward. I think I have a selection, a person that could be a good fit or would be a good fit for our community. So I think with that, we'll move forward with your selections, should you choose to select one. I guess, how does that work, Victor, if two people decide that they do not want to partake in the ranking?
Mr. Mayor, you could have a majority vote to move to reject all the candidates would be your alternative, or to select the final candidate with the lowest score.
Well, I believe we have the majority in a 3-2, in just the open conversation here to kind of move forward with selecting and moving on to the negotiation part of the process. So.
With permission, Mayor, I think there's also a section in here saying town councilors to have an open
Sure.
discussion of
Yeah.
the candidates.
Yep. You want to start?
No, I just want to have the discussion. No, but I'm very curious. I really want to hear. I value the other counselors' opinions, and I'd like to. And I'll start if you want me to.
Sure. Yep. Please do.
Okay. I think, maybe Karen kind of stated. There's no. If I could find the best of all four of these people and put it together, we'd have an ideal candidate. I think that I was really impressed with Jeff Wilkins, that he had long tenures, that he's been in much bigger barrels, if you will. He's been in much bigger communities and projects. I thought he was a little loose on how he would control the agenda, and the fact that he has no Florida experience. But in conversations with him, he's familiar with lots of different forms of municipal governments, and he's been through those. So I think that it wouldn't be too much of a stretch for him with his experience to be able to handle the nuance that is Florida. I was also impressed with Andrew Hyatt. I think that he's had some of the closest experience to what we're looking for as far as hurricane experience. And I'm not sure, and I really liked his comment that he made to me that he would use the CFO to comment on the budget impacts of a lot of ordinance and things that were passed. I think that's an important thing, that at least we have more information going forward. Those are my two favorite candidates.
Okay, I guess with the continued discussion, is there any council member that would like to ask any follow-up questions to any of the four candidates as we continue this discussion?
I don't have a need to ask them questions, having spent time with them. This is probably maybe going on a limb, but the department heads had lunch with them. Would it be okay to hear what their thoughts are, if any of them want to address it?
Well, I'm certainly not opposed to it if they feel comfortable with wanting to do it, if the town manager thinks it's a good idea. You gotta turn your mic.
I expect you'd see a lot of tap dancing, but if you want to ask them,
Well,
the rest of you haven't even, chimed in. I mean, I would get through the process, or even use the ranking forms. I'm not sure, at some point you'll get to what, who's number one, who's number two, and then you got to kind of dig a little deeper at that point. But I would suggest you at least kind of narrow it down to what you think you've got.
Well, and I was just trying to get to somewhere where maybe I could get a comfort level with them, knowing that these are the people they'd be working with every day.
well, then we'll do that. If any staff member is here and feels like they would like to come in, and you don't necessarily maybe have to give a name, but is there someone that you felt comfortable with out of the group? I think is what Councilor King is trying to get at. But it's up to you. Seeing none? Probably a smart move. Vice Mayor Adderholt, do you have any discussion?
Well, I would say a couple things. Number one, there's been some skepticism out there because there was a very sincere desire to have our existing team stay on, and that's certainly, that appreciation is well deserved. But my sense is, having spoken with both of them, that's not an option. I know they're not going to leave us in the lurch, which is wonderful, but they're encouraging us to press on. We had 80 people apply for this position, and the person who we respect from that team, who we wanted to stay on, or both of them, quite frankly, is Mr. Wilkins. And as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but Keith played the greatest role in winnowing down the 80 names to 4, or originally 5, but now 4 names. So for the skeptics out there, I would say 2 things. Number one, that we need to move on because that's the direction Keith and Chris have given us. And second of all, out of the 80 people that applied, the top 5 names, and now 4 today, were selected in part by Keith Wilkins, the person that we obviously would have loved to have stay on. So I just want people to be aware of the process there because that's what we have before us. I do think, I agree with Councilor Veach. I would reverse the order, though, significantly. I thought Andrew Hyatt's resume was spectacular. I thought his experience at Surfside and his relationships that resulted from that tragedy parallel in certain ways what we have been through and could really help the town. I think it's somebody who could hit the ground running. He's run beach towns. He's got the right demeanor. He seems to be someone of integrity. I know there were some questions as to why he left Surfside. He's addressed those adequately as far as I'm concerned. And I think there's a very good story for him behind that. And I think it's, again, somebody who could start tomorrow with a zest and an earnestness that I think would serve this town well. I think it's important to obviously go into while we're doing the negotiation phase, continue to do some due diligence, check references, check members of the council, other people in that community, just to confirm my instincts based upon what I've been reading and studying and in my interview with him. But I think Andy Hyatt is somebody of the utmost skill set and integrity who could start and serve the town of Fort Myers Beach well. And again, my second choice would be Jeff Wilkins. He does not have Florida experience, which I think it's not fair, but it's a reality that we need somebody who could start and hit the ground running. And even though he has a wonderful, fine Indiana education, I think he's at a disadvantage not having any Florida experience. Thank you.
Councilor Woodson, you have anything to add to that? Feel free.
I will say, out of the 4 candidates, Wilkins and Hyatt were my top 2. Hyatt was by far my top candidate before I had the interview, just because of his experience with Surfside, his experience with his longevity. There was a lot of conversation on Facebook and social media about the movement of all the candidates, and I will say for the most part that these 2 candidates certainly calmed me about their movements and why they had their movements and that type of thing, so I feel comfortable with that. I have to say, and Keith and I were in this interview together, I have to say that I had a huge red flag when interviewing Mr. Hyatt, and Keith knows what it was, and it was a diversity comment that I was done. So for that reason, I cannot go forward with that candidate, although he was my number 1 all the way through on the list. So.
All right. Well, I'll try to be as brief as I can. I think over the last few months, we've been fortunate to have these 2 gentlemen on the right, kind of come into our lives and help work through some of the challenges we've faced over the last few months. I believe that the town rubbed off on them as much as they admit it and sometimes don't admit it. They have been very forthcoming, at least with me, and I believe with everyone else, that they came here to help. They're not going to leave us high and dry, but it was not their intention to be the long-term solution. So you have to respect that. I believe that, as one of the candidates up here said, I don't know that there's one specific person out there that fits every perfect thing that we'd want in a perfect world, but we have to be realistic. We have to remember that we're in an area that's going to be very challenging for someone. It's not for the faint of heart. It has to be someone that's willing to engross themselves in our community, understand who we are. I believe these two gentlemen have done that. I think their commitment to sticking around and helping through a transition to make sure the top candidate, at least on my board, works with them. They can they have to fit into the community, and I believe that they're kind of going into this community with their eyes wide open, but not understanding exactly how our little 7 Mile Island works sometimes. I believe these two guys can bring them up to speed. I've had several conversations with Keith and Chris about you can't be taught certain things, but certain things you can be taught. Not every manager will have every single aspect, whether it be financial, on down the line, crisis management, whatever, all the things that we're going to need on down the line. But a good town manager will learn that and learn that very quickly. But you can't teach some things. You can't teach a personality. You can't teach interaction and communication. So with that, I'm ready to, unless there's any more discussion, I'm ready to fill out my ranking sheet and move forward.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm going to put you on the spot
Okay.
because that's a little unfair. We need to hear what your position is because, quite honestly, I've got some concerns about a couple of the candidates' ability to serve in this role, and if the ranking goes astray, I may reconsider. So I'd be curious, respectfully, as to what you're thinking at this point,
As far as who are my top two and who are my bottom two,
or just who you believe the leading candidate is at this point.
Well, I mean, I thought that's what the ranking sheets were for, but since everyone else kind of put it out there, I'll be more than happy to because I've already filled mine out. Talking to them at the beginning, it was very clear to me just in the conversations and then through our private interviews that two of them I don't believe would have what it takes to stand up for what I think they're going to be going into for the next few years. The top two that I had were Mr. Hyatt and Mr. Wilkins, like everyone else. Ultimately, in talking to them privately and then hearing their conversations here, I thought one did a little bit better job than the other. I thought they were a little more focused on what we were saying, had a little bit better answers, in my opinion. All were very, very good in the private, but and the one that I think is the top candidate is one that I think would be the most open and willing to take some help, if that's the way to put it, through our current town managers, to round him out to what I think is going to be a very good fit for the community going forward, and that's Mr. Hyatt.
Thank you.
And I will just make a comment that, like I said, actually both Mr. Hyatt and Mr. Wilkins, Keith's brother, that I think they both have the tools that it would take. I mean, everyone has to kind of adapt to a situation because, like it's been painfully clear, fortunately, there's not many managers who have had to recover from what we've had to recover from. But I will say that in Mr. Wilkins, and not having Florida experience does give me pause, but I feel I think he's a better listener in engagement, because the question that I asked, he's the only one I felt who really adequately answered the question in this group. And that was about how to get the public really involved in this process.
Any other discussion? Any input from the town managers over there? Wow, I wish I had a picture of that. All right, well then let's move forward with filling out our ranking sheets. We'll turn them into the town clerk, and then I believe you just announce it. Okay. And Mr. Town Managers, someone that's new to this, what is the customary thing after the ranking? Is it to bring the top-rated person back in, or is it to continue on with the agenda?
Well, I think you'll announce the results, and then the policy you have in place is that you enter into negotiations with the number one ranked candidate. If you would like whoever that is to come back in and have any further discussion, always difficult to get in details of a contract, and I'm not sure if your town attorney's really ready. I know John sent out several examples of contracts. Keith and I haven't gotten through all of them, and I don't know what our role really is in it, but this is always a delicate part of the process, and I think you want, my suggestion or advice is that you allow your attorney, possibly Keith and I, and Linda to work with. If y'all want to appoint someone to do that, but I always try to protect y'all. This is delicate. You're talking about salaries. You're talking about other benefits. You don't really know what the candidate's expectation is, and those are not public conversations. Obviously, the contract has to come back to you for final consideration, and it was our hope, it doesn't have to happen this way, is that, and we only have about a week or two to do that for your agenda on the 17th. And then that would allow a period of time for, if you approve a contract, for the person to get its life affairs in order and show up sometime in May. Two of these candidates are currently employed. They'd have to give notice to their current employer. The other two aren't, but I don't know what's going on in their life and what their plan is. So that's a long-winded answer to say, if you want to talk to whoever's ranked number one, that's entirely up to y'all. They were asked to hang around. But the way your policy says is you will now enter into contract negotiations with the number one ranked candidate.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't suggesting that we bring them back in there for contract discussions. It was just is it customary to congratulate the top ranked person, or is it you just move on?
If that's your desire, we'd certainly, I'm not sure there's a
I'm-
customary process in
Okay,
this.
well, that's, I guess, what I was getting
We're-
at. I guess, to me, I guess it doesn't necessarily matter.
I can certainly leave the room and go out and, talk to all of them and share results of what happened here and wish everybody the best. And then whoever the number one candidate is, give some idea of where we go from here. And I can do that while y'all move forward with your agenda.
Okay.
Wouldn't it be better, though, to have the contract negotiations separate and brought back on the
absolutely.
17th?
That's
Okay, that's what we're
I said.
talking about.
That's what I
Okay.
said, absolutely. And if you don't conclude in
Direct
time,
the town attorney and town management to engage in those negotiations, and if council members would like, you can delegate a single council member to be involved in that process, or you can just leave it to us to take care of.
Well, I think let's figure out who the top ranked candidate is, and then we'll get to the who we want to work on those negotiations.
Okay. Andrew Hyatt had a combined score of 5. Seth Wallace had a combined score of 12. Jeff Shoebridge had a combined score of 14, and Jeff Wilkins had a combined score of 13. So in rank order, it would be Hyatt, Lawless, Wilkins, and then Shoebridge.
Okay. So, is there any discussion as to preference, whether it be the town manager, town attorney, and do we want a liaison, if you will, from the council to be part of those negotiations?
Mr. Mayor, assuming Councilor Woodson is comfortable, I would recommend that Councilor Woodson be the liaison from the council to join with the interim town managers and the town attorney to begin that process.
I have no objection to that. If Councilor Woodson
I'm
is
totally
comfortable.
comfortable with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I concur. Let's leverage some of that HR experience.
I'm in agreement.
So it would be the town managers, town attorney, and Councilor Woodson in negotiations that you'll bring back contract recommendation on the 17th.
that needs to be a motion and a vote.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously.
Would you like for me to go invite Mr. Hatch?
Sure. Well, if he wants to. Shall we wait for you? Okay.
You can take a.
If, we'll take a quick 5-minute break and we'll come back and we'll say 2:40. Welcome back, everyone. We'll call the meeting back to order at 2:42. We're going to look over here to the town clerk.
Yep, we re-added the scores over the break, and we have just a slight change of order.
Okay.
With a combined score of 5, Andrew Hyatt was in first place. Jeff Wilkins came in second with a combined score of 11, and both Seth Lawless and Jeff Shoebridge tied at 14.
Okay. Victor, you have anything to add?
No, Mr. Mayor, town clerk and I went through it just to make sure we had our math right, but looks like we're good to go.
Okay. Keith, you had something to add to the discussion?
Not about this, but I was just informed that we're probably going to undergo an island-wide boil notice for water here, and if you're on the alert system, we'll probably get an alert in the next short bit over the chlorine residuals of the water we were actually receiving from Lee County. So it's nothing that we've done or not done. It's the water that's coming in. The chlorine is above the standard for chlorine. So we'll receive that boil water notice. And I didn't want y'all to get surprised during the meeting or
Mr.
Or
Town
the public.
Manager, just for people who aren't familiar with the term boil, is it just for drinking? In other words, can people still shower? Is it safe to shower and use the water, or is it just drinking only?
we'll check that and get that information.
All right, thank you.
And the question I would have is, does boiling, I know it helps with organic contaminants, does it boil off chlorine?
For my limited chemistry, it would aerate the chlorinated molecules so that you wouldn't be drinking it anymore. Actually, you'd inhale it then.
One way to do it. All right. Well, just give us an update under the town manager items at the end here. Mr. Hyatt, you want to come up real quick? We just want to welcome you to the negotiations. We're not going to negotiate today. We just wanted you to come up and say congratulations, and we look forward to you working with the staff and seeing where we go.
Thank you. If I may, Mayor?
Certainly.
A couple comments. Yeah, it was a very pleasant experience. I must admit, I had a sense of community speaking to the 5 of you, to the staff, to everyone involved, and the passion that I felt from the commission, from the council, excuse me, got to change my word now. It was very heartwarming, if you will, and not to get mushy or anything like that, but it just, kind of gives you a comfort level of what I was working with, potentially going to be working with. And also I was interviewing you. I mean, that's a two-way street here. So I think that we had some good conversations, and I appreciate the opportunity and the faith you've shown in me. And we've already spoken a little bit, but I'll continue to follow the path that we lead forward. I'll head back toward Jacksonville tomorrow and, start that process.
All right. Thank you very much. Wasn't expecting that. Yep, you're good. Thanks. All right, our next agenda item is Administrative Agenda Item D. It's ITB-23-10-AD, Emergency for Temporary Restoration. It's to adopt Resolution 20... temporary relocation. I don't know what I said, but adopt Resolution 23-26 entitled A Resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, accepting C.E. Gleason Contractors, Inc. as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder to ITB-23-10-AD Emergency Preparations for Temporary Relocations, approving an agreement between the town and C.E. Gleason Contractors, Inc. for temporary relocation work, authorizing the town manager to execute an agreement and expanded budgeted funds on behalf of the town and providing an effective date. You want to take it from here, Mr. Town Manager? Or do we want to hear from Mr. Gleason?
If you had questions, this is a project that's been bid twice. This goes back to pretty much starting right after the storm. The person that really pulled this project together was Larry Johnson, who was one of our lone helpers from
Larry Peterson.
I'm sorry, from the Jacksonville area. Anyway, he's not here. We're just trying to advance getting Bay Oaks Community Center open back up. So what it will be used for is a work in progress. There's still lots of options. The original concept was we were going to move everybody, into that building, and that's certainly not the case right now. We're in modulars, and we hope to stay there for a while, or at least until we decide something different. But again, there are still lots of options on the table, and we have till November, I believe, in these trailers. So plenty of time but we're just wanting to get Bay Oaks open back up.
Is there any questions for staff? Or I see the Gleason Group is in the audience. If there's any questions for them. Vice Mayor Earl?
I just want a clarification from either the town manager or the Gleason Group. Of course, there's the needs of the town and the town hall, but obviously everybody's aware of the needs of the beach school. And is it still the town's intent to try to make to certainly make the deadline of August 10th to have that Bay Oaks facility be ready in part so we can serve the after-school programs for the kids?
I'd let the contractor, I'm not sure what's your anticipated completion date on the project? While they're coming up, I have also, once you get to the next item and decide if you're going to move forward with your engineering work, we've begun a negotiation with DRMP, who's been an engineer of record on Bay Oaks for a while. And I felt we needed, in consultation with Keith, a project manager to make sure that everything's done the way it's supposed to be done. And if you approve the engineering list, then we're going to ask for, it's within our spending authority to do, but wanted to give you a heads up. They may not even know that yet. There wasn't really an engineer on the job. So we'll have to connect them with this engineering company and move forward from there.
Turn your mic on.
Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council, town attorney, and Madam Clerk, managers, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rudy Garcia. I'm here on behalf of C.E. Gleason. Next to me is Mike Whitaker. We also have Bob Stahl, which is in the audience, as well as your project manager, Ricardo Ray, is here today. What we're looking at is, first of all, I would love to ask a couple of questions. When could we have the keys? Because we'd like to get started as soon as you're ready, as soon as the contract would allow us to. And who would the contact person be? But it looks like, to answer your question, 90 days from the day that we start would put us in the midst of July. So we would comply with the request of prior to August 10th.
That would be outstanding. Thank you.
The way it breaks down. The way it breaks down is after today, there's a 10-day grace period before a clock actually starts. And from that, we've got 90 days, and I believe the only holiday it hits is July 4th for one day. So right around that time, 7th, 10th, is around the completion, but we'll have an exact calendar for you on that. But that's the target time right now.
We have been working on the products that have been specified and ascertaining those and finding where and how quickly we can have everything ready here on the job site to be able to start moving forward with the entire schedule. The key, I think, is our communication with the city, who the lead person on behalf of the city will be, how we organize our form of communication with you, be it one conduit, so that we always have a standard to everything that needs to be asked and everything that needs to be complied with.
I certainly appreciate your sense of urgency, and that date, that August 10th date's very important. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yes, sir.
My intention, if you know a little bit about my history, I was a former chairman of the budget, former member of the Florida House of Representatives for 16 years, 10 years in the Senate, and seeing what communities go through. For example, what we went through after Hurricane Andrew. I was the chairman of the legislative delegation, which we brought back over $1 billion to recover. I have talked to both managers about the issues of education. I will be in Tallahassee tomorrow as well. As a matter of fact, I drove in this morning from Tallahassee just to be here for your meeting. But I'm looking for ways that we can help address the issues of the FTEs and the FEFP issues to be able to open up those, the classroom and the school as quickly as possible. I may have some suggestions, and that's something that we would like to do to help on behalf of the city. I also shared with the city clerk that as a gesture of friendship, we would love to fly flags at your city town hall area, the flags that we will bring flown over the state capitol, both the USA flag and the Florida flag, as a gesture and our partnership that we would love to have with you as this pilot program develops for other cities and counties in our state of Florida, which is what my dream is. But we're here to be your partners, to help you, to help the community, and do everything we can to make this project and any other project that we work with in a timely form to help you as best as we can.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Gleason? Thank you, gentlemen. Is there, yes, sir. Yep, gotta go back to the mic.
Would love the keys as soon as possible. And would love to know who we can start working with, because we're here to start working today.
Let's get our contract signed.
Thank you.
Is there a motion for Resolution 23-26?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, Resolution 23-26 passes unanimously. Next agenda item is Administrative Agenda E, RFQ-22-25-AD, Ongoing Miscellaneous Professional Services. Accept the recommended rankings for RFQ-22-25-AD and authorize the town manager to enter into negotiations with the top 5 ranked firms under each category for ongoing miscellaneous professional services. Town manager?
Keith's staying on his phone, which means I have to get on the mic. So this is, as I mentioned before, this was one of the procurements that we had to pause after the storm because of the 200 CFR language that FEMA requires. So it's taken us a long time to get here. But this gives you a menu of options for engineering services on the multitude of different projects that you'll have over the next several years. So I think when talking with the town attorney, the technical thing we want to do is get authorization to not only negotiate but enter into the contracts with the top ranked firms so we can begin issuing task orders on some of these projects that have been unfortunately waiting in the wings to get done. Specifically like the one that you just awarded.
Okay.
We'll have somebody as a project manager over that project. When he asked who he's going to report to, right now we can't answer that question today.
Fair enough, but you're going to work with DRMP
Yes.
on that specific, right? Okay.
Yes, and Jason.
Yeah. Are there any questions for the town manager? Is there a motion for RFQ-22-25-AD? Motion, go ahead.
I'll move to approve.
Got a motion to approve. Is there a second? I'll second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Administrative Agenda Item F, Public Claims Adjuster. Authorize the town manager to waive the procurement policy and execute an agreement with Garrett Claims Group as a public adjuster. Mr. Town Manager?
So this is another issue that we've been dealing with since Keith and I got here. You know, we've had ongoing conversations, multiple calls with the Florida League of Cities Insurance Trust over your insurance claims. We had one last week. this one's kind of time of the essence, especially for town hall, because we've been trying to get in a position to where we could demo town hall and want to do it through the state, iandebris.com, where we won't incur a cost for doing it. FEMA was in this past week while I was here doing their inspection. We've been waiting on that. And that it passed, or whatever you want to say, it's demolished in their opinion. So, insurance adjusters, there are a lot of them out there. Mr. Garrett, somebody that I worked with in Apalachicola and in Gulf County after Hurricane Michael. If you've looked at the agreement, it's a contingency agreement. He only gets paid if he gets more above what the league right now is telling us that we'll get on our claim, which is slightly above $7 million. So the agreement just brings an adjuster on board. I don't know if you've used public adjusters. You just need someone that talks the language with the insurance company and advocates on your behalf. I don't think Keith and I can speak for myself. I'm just not an expert enough to know how hard to push the league in terms of our claim. We pushed and pushed, and with pro bono assistance from Mr. Garrett all along the way. He's been involved in some of our conference calls and helped us at least navigate to get to this point in time.
And just clarity for the public that may or may not be watching. So he would essentially get anything at 8% above $7 million roughly.
7.1 at 110.73. It's an odd number. $7,100,110.73.
And if he gets nothing, he gets nothing.
Correct.
Are there any questions for the town manager?
Mr. Town Manager, I don't question your decision on this. I'm just for the people, again, who may be watching, your decision to use a public adjuster versus go right to our legal counsel, your thinking behind that, just for curiosity purposes.
Well, you go through this negotiation process, and if you get to the end, you still have the option of going to court. I mean, so this is an interim step before you would ever get to a point where you're in an impasse and you end up in court. If we get that far down the road, then the town attorney will step up and in. But right now, we're still negotiating. This person just looks at your policy in detail and compares your wind and your flood and maximizes the claim that you get paid by the Florida League of Cities. And he gets paid by getting more money for you than the league is currently willing to pay.
Thank you.
And just for a little clarity for my fellow council members who may or may not know, or the public, that this is essentially the last hurdle that we need to go through to be able to get town hall demolished and removed and start that rebuilding project. The longer we wait, the longer that's going to sit there, and the less chance we have to get it picked up under the state's iandebriscleanup.com.
If things go as they're planned right now, he would have a structural engineer in the building next week, and that's the last step. He just needs somebody on his team to look at the building.
Okay. Is there a motion to authorize the town manager to waive the procurement policy and execute an agreement with Grant Claims Group and Public Adjuster?
So moved.
Got a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, technically, I don't know, it's Garrett, not Grant.
Oh, I'm sorry, Garrett. Evidently, I can't read today. Thank you, Councilor King.
I would just like to say, I don't know who negotiated with them, but I know that we're personally working with adjusters as we speak, and they have been amazing, way beyond what we could have ever even thought to bring to fruition. And the normal fee is 10%. So whoever negotiated the 8%, kudos to you, because it's usually, I haven't found them to be much in negotiation, so that's great.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. The last administrative agenda item G is for RFQ-23-11-TC, Town of Fort Myers Beach General Legal Representation. It's for the selection of a town attorney. Mr.
we'd solicited for services within the Southwest Florida area, Manatee County down to Collier County. And with that stipulation, and also the stipulation that it be a Florida Bar local government certified firm. And we received only one response. That was from a firm in Clearwater, which is outside of that geographic area. But they have an attorney who lives in Babcock Ranch, so I don't, and he operates out of his house. I don't know if that would be satisfactory to council or not. Given that, if I needed to, I would recommend changing microphones. Thank you. I would recommend perhaps going back out with a little bit different criteria, maybe the same geographic area, so that we do still have a local presence, but that we don't require the local government certification, because that's not necessary. It may sound like it is, but it's just like and maybe council could, or our attorney could explain better, but to me, it's like they have environmental certifications, land use certifications. You're still an attorney, you still have that expertise, but it's like an additional bar exam is what I was told.
It's a little more in depth than that. A board certification means you can advertise yourself as an expert. It's a pretty intensive process. I think there's only 200 in Florida that have that certification. In Florida, you cannot advertise yourself as an expert in local government law unless you have that certification. Whether or not you find that necessary is your decision, but that's just the information.
And of course, another option is to continue with our existing service.
I would say that option, attempt to negotiate with the attorney that lives in Babcock Ranch with the firm out of Clearwater, or resolicit, correct?
Or retain.
Right, I said that one first, or retain. So.
Has have your phone calls been returned to this firm or this gentleman?
No, I did place a call. It landed in their Clearwater office. I talked to a receptionist and said she would forward the call. He was working remotely, and she was working remotely, and I've not received a call back, and it's been about 2.5 weeks.
Any questions for the town manager?
Procedural question, Keith. Is item G phrased to reflect putting it out for a new RFP? In other words, if we were to move item G, would that reflect the desire to put it out for a new and different RFP?
Item G says selection of county attorney. So I would say it requires a motion for the direction that the county council would prefer to go.
So essentially be very specific in your motion.
Correct. Thank you.
So this certification, Keith, that you would like to, if we go that route and you would like to dismiss, is that something, so you said how important is it? Let me put it that way. And do we currently have it? Is it something that we would be really missing out on if we didn't have it?
My non-legal opinion, and then I'll pitch it over to Victor. I did receive a call from one of the firms I'd expected to respond, who specializes in local government law. And they said, while some of their attorneys do have this certificate individually, the firm is not certified, and they did not have an attorney available with that certification for us, so they opted not to. While they were one that downloaded our solicitation, they opted not to submit. So I would assume that since they specialize in local government law, that it's not necessary, and I can't comment on the importance of it.
It's a level of protection. The Florida Bar is the one that gives out these certifications. It's not done by a third party. I'm not certified myself, John is. It's a very selective process. Are there attorneys who are very good at what they do that don't have certifications? Yes. But the ones that do have it are generally good. It's less of a risk. Because they can advertise themselves as experts, and the Florida bars approve them as such.
And with that, Victor, as a law firm, because if you have one person in your law firm that has this board certification, can you advertise as a board certified law firm, or does it have to be individually statused?
It's based on the individual attorney. So the attorney can advertise themselves as an expert in that area of law, and they've been approved as such by the Florida Bar. But you can't have another member from the firm advertise himself as an expert. It doesn't apply to the firm as whole. It applies to that individual attorney.
And how does it work in the attorney office world if one person is board certified but isn't necessarily the one that would be the town attorney? In this case, you're here, but you're not board certified.
Correct.
But I would assume you still have access to the resources of the board certified
Correct.
attorney?
For example, the way we have it set up now, John is your city attorney, and I assist him. But your city attorney is board certified.
Got it.
And from what I understand is that the firm has to assign us an attorney who's board certified to have that qualification.
And Victor, you said less of a risk. Could you be a little more specific when you say risk?
Well, if you say we want an expert in this area of law, if you just limit it to Florida Bar certified attorneys in that area of law, they've been certified by the Florida Bar, which is the governing organization for attorneys, as an expert. But there are other attorneys that have similar experience that don't have that certification. It's a voluntary certification. You have to apply for it. So to say on one end it's less risk because someone has approved, the Florida Bar's approved that person as an expert. They've gone through the process, they've been tested. Can somebody else be just as good? Sure, but they haven't been approved by the governing organization as one.
All right. So we'll bring it back here to the council for some discussion. You look like you're ready to say something, Vice Mayor.
Victor, to the mayor's, I'm not sure you completely answered the mayor's question. With respect to additional risk, are you talking about litigation risk?
No, what I mean is if you're setting certain qualifications, you want somebody who, I think the word was expert or had expertise. If you want to limit it to that pool of experts, it has to be a board certified attorney because you can't advertise yourself as an expert otherwise.
But from a practical standpoint, that does not have any practical impact on the town, except for the way we've phrased it in the RFP, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So it has no practical input or no practical effect on the town having a board certified attorney.
It's a qualification issue. It's if somebody's been approved by a governing body as an expert, then you can label them an expert.
But I assume also that certification comes with some examinations and study and things?
That's correct.
So
it's a selective process. You have to go through testing. You have to have certain experience.
So it's a way to certify expertise. And so you said there may be somebody out there who has expertise without the certification, but you really don't know.
Correct.
Mr. Town Manager, you awful chatty over there. Got something you'd like to say?
Well, I wanted to point out that, Keith, this was put together by one of the recovery contractors that we had on board that were all phased out last week at our 6-month anniversary. So it is, for Keith and I, it's an area we don't normally, I've never been involved in this. You know, there's always separate, the way you go about hiring your town attorney is separate than the way you hire a town manager. We're helping you with the town manager. This is a little different. I mean, these are things like, you know, they're in this solicitation. We put one in the packet. You know, there has to be someone available to kind of answer questions. There's a law firm that wants to submit needs to be well educated on the work at hand and the amount of caseload, the amount of hours involved, obviously rates that are there. So there's a lot, and we don't have the person anymore that put this together. So I don't even know if we can get from them a Word document to where we could amend it if you decide to amend it. And I think that's partly why you only got one response, is there was just not much communication. I don't know how many calls were made. I think there's a phone number in here someplace that you can call. I don't know how that worked. Was it posted in the proper places? The Florida Bar has its own kind of website. It did get the Florida Bar. So, you know, if you go forward again, obviously what you hope for is a better response to your request and more options going forward. So just want to make sure that works in your favor the next go-round.
So just a question too. How does the cost of the proposal from this legal service compare to the costs of the service we have now?
I haven't seen the response from the firm, so if they proposed a rate structure, I haven't seen it, nor could I comment on how it compares to the one you have with your current attorney. I have not compared it.
So this was essentially just a potential acceptance of the negotiation.
Just like the manager.
Just like a manager.
You know, you have to negotiate with whomever you decide to negotiate. I think the plan was, just like you went through today, is you would bring in, I mean, if you had a whole bunch, you'd have to screen just like Keith and I did, but if you had 3, then you'd probably bring them in for interviews and talk to them and ask questions, and they'd ask questions of you, and then you rank who you want to, or don't rank. You know, that's your decision.
Okay. Well, in an effort to move this forward, I think I'm not personally comfortable in giving a contract or entering into negotiations to a company that, 1, isn't here, and 2, hasn't responded to phone calls. It just doesn't make me feel very comfortable. And I would support going back out for bid with the removal of the board certification to potentially open up the responder pool, if you will. That's kind of where I'm at, but I'll let my fellow counselors weigh in.
You know, I would totally agree with that. And I would also want to really look at specifics of what we need as a town right now. Obviously, there's certain criteria that's going to be standard all the way through, but maybe what have been our disappointments and the reason we're doing this in the first place, and what are those skill sets or soft skills or whatever you want to call them that are highly important to us at this juncture. And maybe, I don't know what those are in that RFP, but maybe it's something that we could add to.
So let me make a suggestion here. This is a very unique situation where you're at least having conversations about transitions in both your top leadership spots in the town, and it's just hard. Imagine that Mr. Hyatt, who will be on board in the next 30 days, we hope, plus or minus, certainly not something that you would want him to have to say grace over, I would suggest. Keith and I can only help as much as we can. I obviously have been around a long, long time, and I have legal acquaintances along the way. I have a good friend who's offered pro bono to assist this is with Neighbors Giblin Law Firm, probably one of the most reputable local government firms in the state of Florida. What we all want, I assume, is this process to be open and fair, and there's share of information, as you said, so that the results are something that's successful. If you're going to do it again, it just has to result in a better outcome. And I'm just throwing that out there. I'd hate to see Mr. Hyatt inherit this, and I don't, Keith, but, and we're still trying to hire a good procurement person, and certainly don't want a brand new procurement person to come in and be thrown in the midst of a town attorney selection process. So I'm just trying to think of outside the box how we can get help to make this process successful in the end.
And I'll just comment that I don't see any compelling reason to change our attorney. We've already lost an enormous amount of administrative know-how, institutional knowledge. I think that it's just more turmoil, and no one to me, has stated in any kind of real terms what their problem with the attorney is. We're already talking about dumbing down the attorney. We have a quote here that's actually from farther away from Miami, and proximity was supposed to be one of our criteria. I just don't see any reason we have more important things to do than be changing the attorney where no one has expressed specifically what the problem with our existing attorney is. And also, we can't match those qualifications.
Well, I can tell you, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm not saying anything that I haven't said to John or I haven't said publicly. The lack of response that we get from our current law firm in a timely fashion is horrible. No other way to say it. It's horrible. You shouldn't be waiting 3, 4, 5, 6 days after someone commits to you that they will get you something, and it still doesn't show up, and you have to call and ask where it's at constantly. That is not providing good service, in my opinion. That is why I didn't want to continue the contract a year ago, before the storm. So personally, that's why I feel it's not in the best interest of the town, because I have not seen a good enough improvement in our legal services to warrant not at least looking at other options. But I do agree with you, the institutional knowledge and some of the lawsuits that are out there, they're in the middle, but a lot of that's the Florida League of Cities is carrying that load for us. They're the ones that actually have the institutional knowledge as well as our attorney. But unless I see a drastic increase in responsiveness, we got dealt a pretty big blow. We can't sit around and wait because someone's too busy to help out our town. And that's my 2 cents.
Well, and I would think that knowing that your firm is on the line, that responsiveness, if that was really important to him or them, that it would have turned around totally since the time that we started this till now, and it hasn't. So I don't hold a lot of hope for it.
See, in my conversations in council, the only thing I heard was lack of trust, some vague things.
Well, there is some lack of trust still.
Well, and, again, it hasn't been expressed to me clearly what that is. I think that if we want to put that as an ultimatum in front of our attorney, it's a little hard to enforce because it all depends on what you're asking for. Some things take a lot of time to drum up, some things don't. I've certainly, in my conversations with John, he answers the phone. If he can't, he gets back to me pretty quickly. I've had no problem at all with communications with him.
And Councilor Vici, I don't mean to cut you off, I want to apologize, but I don't disagree. If I call, John calls back. But I'll give you an example. 3 weeks ago, going on 3 weeks ago, I asked for a simple volunteer form for one of our parks for volunteers that wanted to help clean it up. I still do not have it. I was told I'd have it by the weekend. It's been almost 3 weeks later, and I still do not have it. We can't have that. And that's a simple volunteer form. Imagine the delays we have with complex forms. Remember what we went through with the town manager's agreement. It was supposed to be an easy thing, turned into a month and a half, 2 month process. It's just, that to me, it's not a trust issue. I completely trust John. I think John's very knowledgeable. I think John knows exactly what he's doing. He gives us very good sound advice, but we're working in a time-sensitive time frame now where we have to respond to things quickly. We have to be able to procure things quickly once you go through the process. And I don't feel that that's one of the lugs that have come off the wheel, if you will, in my opinion.
And, to use the town manager negotiation as an example, I mean, every negotiation has two sides. And so the interim town managers had the form that they had used, and our attorney had the form that we had used, and we don't give our attorney the authority to be able to, on his own, change the contract, and without council approval. So we were a part of that cog.
Can I ask for a clarifying point? You mentioned if we going forward, something about another firm with pro bono. I guess I wasn't clear on what you were meaning by that.
Well, if you decide to resolicit, this document then needs to be amended. I took it upon myself to forward the document to the firm that I mentioned, and I think Keith has gotten some feedback on some changes. This was, again, done by C.D. McGuire, I believe.
C.D.R. McGuire's attorney. Some of the things that Karen brought up, I mean, some conversation about what y'all
want in here in order to get a response that's responsive would take a little bit more work. And so, yes, I'm suggesting that this is a legal process. I am attempting to get Keith and I out and Mr. Hyatt out and give you help at no cost to have a successful outcome. Make sure it's posted in the right place, make sure it's amended the way you want it, probably has to come back to you in a different form for you to bless it before it goes out again. Answer questions, somebody that can, in legally, in lawyer talk, communicate with firms that have an interest and put your best foot forward. And I just don't think Keith and I are the right people to fill that spot. And I know this brand new procurement person would not be, and I know Mr. Hyatt, I wouldn't want to put him in that position. So I'm just throwing it out there that there's a path forward to get some help so that the results are better than you got the first time. And we don't have the help that we had when this went out right now.
Well, I personally don't have an issue with, local, that's a pretty broad word. I do not have an issue with the firm being outside the window that was in there should someone reside inside that window or in this scenario. But the lack of responsiveness, to me, doesn't get us any more than what we're dealing with now. And I would be in favor of, as I said, rejecting this bid, sending it back out for bid through your pro bono status of the company that you had mentioned, assuming we can do that without having to vote on something with procurement issues, but preferring a board certified, but not necessarily making it a requirement, and then see where it goes from there.
And is there a standard time frame on that turnaround? I know the time frame that we had was pretty long, but I don't know if that's something that is a must, if we can shorten that time frame on turnaround?
I don't even know that I can answer that. I'm just not familiar enough with this process to say what's the standard, unless Keith has.
You gave it 30 days.
But again, these people and this firm has no interest in the long-term work here. So I'll say that publicly too. This firm has no interest in the job, so they're just willing to help.
And for the sake of trying to get it right, we have a very competent attorney in a law firm. They do lack a few skills that I think are very pertinent. But to your point, Councilor Veach, it's not necessarily a rush to make something happen, at least in my opinion. I feel that we've got representation.
John has repeatedly told us all, he's your town attorney
until
three of you don't want him to be.
Right.
I think he's told all of us that.
And I'm not sure, your example too, Dan, about you wanted a form from him. I'm not sure if an individual counselor really has the authority to request something of the town attorney like that. Because he works for the council as a whole.
But you could, I don't know why I couldn't. I mean, it's not something that we would just implement. It would have to be something that you draft up, that we'd look at like a contract like anything else. Am I mistaken here, Victor? Or?
I don't know the specific circumstances of what you and John had discussed, so it's hard for me to comment on it. But that would be something to take up with him.
Yeah, but you know my point, because he works for the council as a whole. If I were to go and ask him to draw something up and take his time and take his resources and town resources, then I would expect that to come through the council.
Well, okay.
Because we have this again. I don't mean you particularly, but we're a weak mayor form of government where our authority is as a council, not as individual council people.
I was simply using it as an example of a simple volunteer form that could have been brought before council, because we can't do anything, as you said, without everybody approving it. But we don't. I mean, he works for all of us, just like he works for the community. I mean, he would have to answer questions to the community. But I guess I kind of see your point, but I don't really see your point. But it doesn't change the fact that you're comfortable with where you're at. I'm not. I don't think some of the other council members are either. And where do we go from here?
I did. Neighbors Giblin.
So, Victor, the pro bono law firm that because obviously it would be awkward to have our attorneys put together a solicitation for something that could replace them. What is the process to allow the town manager would we have to put it out through a normal procurement process to,
If you're retaining them as your town attorney, even in the interim, then yes, it would be the same process.
putting it out?
We're not
No.
proposing to retain anybody as
No.
a town attorney.
No, we're proposing to
Get their input.
to reject this bid potentially and use the services of a pro bono attorney to redo the RFP process or the request for proposal. Would we need to go through what is the process we have to go through if we want to do that?
Well, first you'd have to move to resolicit the RFQ, and then you could work hand in hand with that company to come up with qualifications that are agreeable to the council.
And then it can go out from there. All right, well, I will make a motion to reject the current bid, to instruct the town manager to work with the pro bono firm to redraft the RFP, to remove the necessity for the board certified certification, although I would like to see the terms preferred in there, and try to figure out I don't know how to word it, but try to figure out some sort of wording that if you're outside the boundaries that you'd set, that we're not opposed to someone being inside those boundaries, but the office being outside it. Does that make sense?
So do we need a motion to reject this first and then another motion to?
Does that have to be two motions, Victor? I guess I should have asked that.
I mean, you don't have any candidates, I don't believe. You have one, so it'd be a motion to reject it.
We had one response. I guess the question would be, was it a qualified response since they were outside the geographic area? So we maybe had none because
If you
he
didn't
wasn't
have any
qualified?
candidates, there's nobody to reject.
Correct.
So then it would just be to move to resolicit the RFQ with the input from the pro bono office.
I will amend my motion to resolicit for town attorney with the amendments so discussed.
Second.
Clarification on your comment about the regional thing. I was not clear on your approach to what the region would, right now it's basically Manatee to Collier.
But personally, for me, the region isn't as important as the responsiveness. As long as you're responsive, you're there when we need you, you get us things when we need it, that's more important than your zip code.
So the regional requirement can go out?
I wouldn't, that wouldn't be a huge necessity for myself, but.
I honestly, I haven't had any problem with the fact that I've never been to John's office. I'm never planning on going to the attorney's office, but it's really just puts a burden on the attorney. What I wouldn't want to do is have them charge us whatever their hourly rate is while they drive to a meeting from wherever they are. Right now, John drives on his own time. And Victor.
Well, my guess is that would be part of the negotiations should someone apply. So we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. Councilor Veach dissenting.
I've heard that before.
Next
item is town manager items.
Just a couple of things for the week that Keith assigned me to work down here, the anthills that I kicked. One of the biggest impacts this week, obviously, was the withdrawal of the resources, specifically in our community development department. So we lost a number of permit techs that were state positions, and we lost some code enforcement people that were state positions without going through the list. But working with the staff and checking with finance in terms of how we're doing with our permitting. Really don't want to get into a long conversation about permitting because it's a popular conversation that we all like to have. We're getting more positive comments from the public about our staff work, and I commend them for all that they've done. But those permit techs are important to us, and to cut to the chase, I think Keith and I are in a position to want to. Our custom is if it's not a budgeted position, then we have to come to you to ask for those positions to be added to the staff. And so we have 3 people that were on our team that went out the door Thursday or whatever that day was. And if we can get your concurrence, they've already applied for positions, a job description that was created. And with your concurrence, we can have them back in the office and working maybe by tomorrow or the next day. And so our ask is for those 3 positions. And finance has certainly concurred that the resources are there based on the amount of activity that you've got, that we can financially support those 3 positions.
So the fees for the permits coming in will pay for the permitting positions?
Correct.
Like it's supposed to work?
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to authorize the town manager to hire the 3 permitting techs to replace those that were lost after the 6-month time frame.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion?
So I just have a question with what you said. So are you looking at hiring the same people?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So everyone is in agreement that the services they provided,
Steve, they were capable, good people that work for us.
and they've all,
We like them, they like us, they want to
Okay.
come back to work.
okay, and they already filled it out and ready to go?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, were these, how many texts did we have from the, in that 6-month period?
Yeah, I
more
may
than 3,
stumble on
right?
this, and Steve may have to help me, or Keith. You know, it's a mixture. We still have 2 Parks and Rec employees that are on loan that were trained as permit techs. I think we have 4 of our own, and so that's 6. And sure,
Yeah.
I'll mess it up. I stole your mic. I did.
Good afternoon, Steve Poposky, Community Development Director. We had several people helping us. We had 7, and we had 10 code officials. So as far as permitting goes, we had quite a few, but I believe the request was for 4. 3 would be happy with, 4 would be very happy with. I think that it would really help to get the permits out in time and continue the level of service that we've sort of set expectations as. In order to have people come in, we have some helpers that are helping from other departments. They're eventually going to need to be reallocated to their original departments. So these positions would basically be replacing them.
So do we have 3 or 4 candidates?
We have 4.
But we only have 3 spots, or are we saying we have 4 spots?
I believe they're saying we only have the money for 3 spots.
Oh.
This is where, like, I cautioned about how deep we dig. This is the beginning of all the work with me, you know, absent. There's been a ton of conversation about what the future of this department looks like. The bigger challenge to me, above the permitting tech positions, are plans review people and building inspectors on our own. And this is where it gets complicated. These are contract positions that are very expensive, and in my opinion, are more important than permit techs. And I don't want to do anything to be negative about permit techs, but, you know, sending our plans to the East Coast and waiting for them to come back. And then when we, you know, need building inspectors, we just have to rely on the ability of folks with other contracts when they're going to show up. So anyway, my 2 cents, I'm tougher on Steve maybe than Keith might be or whatever. But, you know, I'm an incremental person. Okay, so we lost some. Let's plug these 3 in. Obviously, when our Parks and Rec people have to go back to Parks and Rec, we're going to have to come back in terms of permit tech. But I try to get Steve to, you know, give him a little bit and see how it works, you know, and if we need that other one, we'll come back to you. But we're going to have to come back to you anyway, hopefully sooner rather than later, with a financial plan. We have to evaluate the money that we're spending with the contract people versus what it's going to cost us. I think there's work been done on job descriptions for plans review and for building inspectors, you know, and then when you advertise it and recruit, then there'll be a negotiation on what you actually pay these people that are much higher level professional people that are going to be more expensive. And I'm more cautious instead of giving him everything he wants. He wanted 4, I said 3, and you know, you want to go along with 4, you know, or Keith does.
Second.
Whatever y'all want to do. I just want to make my point that there's much more work to be done. We all are on the same page. We want to get this department away from the contract world and with a dedicated in-house, committed to our community with as quick response to our citizens as possible. And that's what everybody's working towards. But it is a financial, as Mr. Beach said, this is a department that operates off the revenue that generates. And I think we've got a brand new finance director. I put him on the spot. Can I get these 3? Absolutely. Then after that, there has to be more conversation. Steve's got to get with them, work out a financial plan on these. I don't know how many plans review people we were even talking about. I've lost track of that. And then how many building inspectors we'd have to hire. Anyway, so that's my 2 cents.
But I would think that you talk about these contractors, the contractor fees, we're paying an upcharge for that. So the people that we would actually hire on staff, it's less of a wash. I mean, it's less than a wash by not having to pay the contract fees on top of that, correct?
That's your hope.
Well, I think when we get to that discussion with the plan reviewers and the building inspectors, we'll have that conversation. But I believe this conversation is specifically about permitting techs. And if what I'm hearing is the specialist in that office needs 4, and we can afford 4, I would give him 4. So I will amend my motion to give 4 permit techs. Do you have a 4th one, Steve? I guess I should say that before I amend my motion. Do you have a 4th person that's willing to come on that was here before that fits the same criteria as the 3 we're talking about?
Yes, we have 4 from the original staff.
Okay, then I will amend my motion to bring in 4 permitting techs, and we'll discuss the plan review and building inspectors when we get to that point.
And so, and there's enough right now permits coming in for the fees to cover those 4 techs?
Yes, sir. At this time, there is. Ultimately, we want to provide the best service possible. We've opened up our doors and really expanded our services with, basically a lot of people are doing this for the first time. We're doing a lot of, one-on-one assistance with permitting. And in order to keep that up, we really need the staff.
So did you make that in a motion, Mayor?
Yes, I amended my motion to make it 4 instead of 3. I don't remember who was the second.
I thought it was Bill, but it could have been me.
Was I? I will amend my second to go with your motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none? Tell them to get to work.
Okay. I don't need it. We're good. Jacob brought me another one. A couple of just quick odds and ends. Did want to report that we did also submit our DEO bridge loan application late last week. We have a meeting now, I see on my schedule, with DEO Secretary Ivy when we're in Tallahassee. We've been texting this weekend. I'm optimistic that the loan review process will be expedited and that we'll hear something in the next few weeks on our loan. That was for $11.9 million. I do believe also from staff that the FEMA bridge loan, $2.5 million, is culminating, and you may see those resources in the next couple of weeks as well. So, and I believe there's almost $3 million, 2.6, I think, from memory, additional insurance proceeds that should be received in the next week or so. So you're getting good news daily on the revenue side of the house, and just wanted to report that out. Also, we had spent almost full morning with Roger Desjardins, the county manager, and his 2 deputies last week. A lot of conversation about the CDBG DR program. That's the $1 billion that HUD brought down a week or so ago. The county will oversee. Mr. Beach and I have had some comments about workforce housing and his interest in that. He sits on the task force that Commissioner Ruane chairs from the county, and there'll be much more discussion about CDBG DR going forward. I think the mayor has, Mr. Craig, I believe, the president of Tidal Basin visits later this week. You know, we, the town, wants certainly to push the envelope on the allowable uses of the CDBG DR program. Most of what we talked about with the county, in addition to waivers and such for CDBG DR, which you can ask for uses of the funding, is the Times Square planning process and opportunities that exist in Times Square for a partnership with not only the business community there in the town, but the county, because of the resources they have there. So without getting too long-winded, I believe the commission will probably discuss some of this tomorrow at their meeting. So I just wanted to mention that those conversations took place. That's all I have.
All right. Town attorney items.
No items for discussion, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Council member items and reports. Vice Mayor Adderholt.
Just one. I just wanted to update my colleagues on the interlocal agreement negotiations that are going on with the Lee County School District. At a meeting last week, myself, our town council, and the chief counsel for Lee County, as well as the superintendent and his chief of staff, and they have asked us to sort of evolve into a informal cone of silence while these negotiations are going on. And there is no draft yet of the interlocal agreement. They're currently working on a draft. And but based upon the meeting last week, I'm comfortable that the interests of the kids, the parents, as well as the town are going to be protected. And but obviously we have that draft, and as soon as we have that draft and it's appropriate, we'll disseminate it to the council and staff here for review. But that's kind of where we're at. So it'll probably take a week or two for the various councils to come up with that draft, and then we'll begin to have a working document. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Councilor Veach.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. One thing is through this, through this Recover Lee program, is that the block grant, so the CDBG-DR block grant, there's a lot of interesting uses it can be done for. And one of those, and I hate to get too acronymy, but I guess that happens when you sit on one of these committees, is the hazard mitigation grant program. Now, this is a program that can be up to $150,000 to raise a house or rebuild a house, depending on locations and some other factors. And there are lots of, it takes a long time. You have to carry flood insurance in perpetuity afterwards, so there's definitely strings to it, but it can be a game changer for a lot of people who are struggling about whether or not they're going to rebuild. The other thing is that typically those hazard mitigation grants are 75% grant, 25% match. But at the last meeting, I was told that the block grants can also be used for that 25% match. So the combination of those two pieces can really be a game changer for people. If anybody's listening and isn't on Facebook or any of the programs, the town has a link where you express your interest. There is no risk. You can back out at any time you want. We needed 50 people to qualify as a municipality. The last I heard, we were about 100. So now if they disqualify some of those people for various reasons, it may come down, but it's a really good opportunity for people to try to get their house raised, and we have a safer community and keep some of our people here. Another thing is I know that they get involved in this, Tidal Basin is kind of as a point person, and at another event I attended, there was USDA, the Department of Agriculture, and I was told by them, and they gave me a table, that we are qualified for USDA funding for two reasons. One is the size of our population. We're small enough. And the other is, ironically enough, that in the 2010 census, our average or median income was low enough to have us qualify. And so it's a very important thing, because I met with the regional head of the USDA, and she was talking, $20-25 million potential in grants that could come from that. I don't know, of course, the strings. I did call in Eliza from Tidal Basin to be a part of the conversation, so they could speak the acronym speak. But it came me think that I would appreciate maybe at our council meetings if we would have a fairly regular presentation by Tidal Basin to where we are with all these moving pieces and grants, and maybe keep them to task a little bit encourage them to come in with good news for us.
Yeah, I'd certainly support that. That was actually one of the things I was going to talk to Mr. Craig about when he comes to town this week. So I'd be in support of that. Councilor Veach suggested, maybe once a month, get an update from Tidal Basin as to where we are with applying. I guess I shouldn't put words in your mouth, but where we're at as far as financially going after grants, what we received, what's pending, what's coming in, what's potentially out there we could go after. Just update us as to where they're at.
Yep, certainly, and I'd also asked them a week or so ago that I wanted to start meeting with our finance director and them just to get an idea of how that's flowing too, of when we could expect to get some funds returned to us, what's coming in the pipeline and what's coming out of the pipeline. So once a month, report to council would be great.
And also, I would appreciate just knowing what the needs are, because I know a lot of the needs are matches for things that we've got funding for. Just so when I go to the meeting or I'm filling out these intake forms, I know what our greatest needs are. And even if you don't get them, if you don't ask, you're guaranteed to get nothing.
Anything else?
That'll do it.
Councilor Woodson?
The only thing is I was remiss when it was giving accolades, we got mail. So that was a long time coming, and thanks to Vice Mayor Adderholt for starting that whole process. But it was just really refreshing. I was out of town, and I came home to a mailbox full of mail, and it was awesome.
And our mailman came, and he was tickled pink to be out on the road. He was just meeting people and big smile on his face.
Now I'd like to see the over-under when people are discouraged that they're getting mail. Anything else, Councilor Woodson?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Councilor King?
I guess I wasn't going to say anything, but I'll share that Friday somebody mentioned getting the mail, and they said it was all bills, but they were still excited. So that's the end of my report or items.
Perfect. I pretty much think we've covered everything. I don't have anything else to add at this time. So
Move to adjourn.
Is there a motion? Is there, couldn't even get the words out. We've got a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I got Bill down there breathing down my neck. He wants to take over the.
Yeah. Is that a second? I'll second. Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Is there, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned at 3:50.